everyone. Welcome to Amazing Plantz4mationz. I am so excited to be here with you all on this holiday. I appreciate you all tuning in and spending some time with us today. Thank you to all our servicemen and women. We appreciate you. And I'm so excited for this guest. As you guys know, I'm raw vegan, so I always get a little giddy when we have the raw vegans on the channel. Welcome everyone in the comments. Thank you, Harmonic Earth Healer. She was so excited. She said she can't wait for this, so we appreciate you being here. And so I'm really excited to introduce a very special guest for today's live stream, Chris Kendall. Chris earns his bananas. I love that, how he uses that phrase, especially how much I love bananas. Flowing as a registered holistic nutritionist, a raw vegan lifestyle coach, and a raw food chef. His passion to make the raw food lifestyle as tasty and easy as possible through his consultation services, online courses, raw recipe books, and his free Raw Recipes app, which I'm excited about. Chris will share his incredible journey from a standard diet to discovering raw plant-based living and transforming into a raw food chef and holistic health coach. We'll delve into some topics like how raw food, holistic health, and emotional eating fueled him to make raw vegan food taste great and share recipes to help others transition, as well as he has a by donation consultation service, which I find very interesting, and I love that, to give back. And in this inspiring and educational interview, I'm sure you all will enjoy it. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining. I know that was short. I could have went on, but thank you for being here.
It's almost like I wrote part of it.
Yes,
you did. Thank you so much. I really appreciate to be here with you on this, and for all the people in the comments already, thank you so much. Awesome to see you.
Yay, I know this was another person excited. Muriel was just about as excited as I was. She said, hello from BC, Canada. Love you, Chris and Jen. That is
love BC, and much love to Muriel and Jen as well. I've spent a lot of time in Vancouver. That's actually where I met the raw food diet in earnest, but we can get more into that in the flow.
Sounds great. So I'd always like to just kind of start these off because I'm sure everybody's curious, as am I. So where did you actually find out about this? Were you like already healthy growing up? And, you know, I assume you grew up, since the bio said standard American or standard diet rather. How did this all come about for you?
Well, you know, I'll start with living at home. I lived in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada with my family until I was 17 years old. Skateboarding, I don't remember life before skateboarding. So I just, you know, I was really moved by skateboarding and wanted to move because of it. But my family, my mom, she was a great chef. She still is an amazing chef, and she made great food that was really whole food based. But being, you know, a really active kid and someone who liked a lot of junk food, I also pushed for some kind of processed stuff and ate lots of pizza pops and ice creams and all that kind of stuff. But I was so young and active, it didn't really catch up to me. When I was 17, I moved out. Me and my friends, some of us graduated early from school so we could move out early and skateboard. And we moved to Vancouver, Canada. And I loved it out there, but I was on a really cheap budget. And that's where my diet really started to go south. You know, like I remember there was a period of time where it was basically dollar noodles, but, you know, like maybe 2 packs for $1 at that time. I'm not even sure. Maybe it was more than that, but I'd be eating noodles. I'd be eating rice.
I think we still do that sometimes.
Yeah, it's delicious. I'll admit, if I could have those noodles and they were just as healthy as fruit, I'd still have them. But I digress. But it was, yeah, lots of noodles, lots of rice. Sometimes it'd be rice with soy sauce. Sometimes it'd be rice with milk and sugar. When I was splurging, I'd go to the McDonald's and get the 49-cent burgers for, you know, for the special day, and the 39-cent hamburgers and 49-cent cheeseburgers, and I get 10 a day and just eat those. And, you know, I started smoking more and drinking more and all the cheapest stuff I could get as well. Started smoking weed, and my health just started to slowly go down, you know, dollar slices, partying more and more and more. And without going too deep into it, by the time I was like 18, 19, and I moved to Edmonton, Alberta when I was 18, pretty much on my birthday, because the legal drinking age in Edmonton was 18 instead of 19, like everywhere else in Canada. So that just kind of goes to show you drinking was a big part of my life. And as I got closer to 19 in 1999, I was really depressed. My joints were hurting. I was already an established amateur skateboarder in Canada, and starting to go towards pro. I was offered a pro model by one company, and but I was depressed. My joints were hurting. I didn't really see that becoming a future because I didn't like life anymore. I literally was falling apart mentally, emotionally, physically, and I was wishing for death a lot of the time, to be honest. And I knew I needed to find something. And the first thing that kind of got me on this journey was in Walmart, of all places, in a VHS dollar bin where I got a power yoga tape. And I just started really getting into yoga. So this is in 1999, and it really woke me up to the reality of, you know, slowing down, kind of becoming more meditative, matching my breath with my movements, helped my body a lot, helped my mind a lot. And it also awoken a interest in yogic literature because, you know, it connects to food and vegetarianism. And at that point, I just thought this was a pleasure tube. I thought I could just shove Taco Bell down it and extra large bacon double cheeseburger pizzas, and that I'd be doing great. But
right.
You know, so I started researching that, and then I went home for a visit to Canada in the summer of 1999, and I found a book called Fit for Life in a bookstore. And it was one of those moments where, kind of like the bulk bin, but I was looking at a wall of books. We got Snooter, who wants to say hi. She's my beautiful kitty.
Oh, hi. Hi. And what's the name, Snooter?
Snooter, yeah, because she likes to snoot her way into everything with her cute little snoot. Like, she pushes her way in.
I love it. We've got usually a cat jumping across the table here, but he's out in the other room sleeping, and the older one never jumps in. But welcome, Tessa. Thank you. And Michelle, thank you for joining.
That's nice.
In Montreal, it's 18. Oh, wow. Thank you. I have more people I need to move to Canada. Like, all my guests here and my seems like commenters are loving the Canada.
Canada love, gotta have it. I love Montreal, and I love all of Canada. It's really sweet. But yeah, that book Fit for Life, it just jumped out, and without going super deep into it, it really outlined a high carbohydrate, low fat, oil free diet made up of whole foods. It pointed towards raw food, but not necessarily like strictly you must be all raw. It just mentioned food combining, sequential eating. It mentioned eating fruit for breakfast on an empty stomach, and that most people have issues with fruit because they eat it as dessert after other foods. And so I was blown away because, again, I thought this was a pleasure tube, and I just started taking it on. And like, I'm kind of A-type. When I find something that just really hits home and really makes sense on all levels, I just take it on. So I can honestly say, like, since reading that in 99, I probably had about 5 cooked breakfasts. I just started taking fruit for breakfast, started food combining, and started moving towards vegetarian and more and more raw foods and less processed stuff. That was a journey. It took about 4.5 years before I went from eating anything and everything and drinking all the time to letting go of most of that stuff and being basically a high raw vegan. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was then in Vancouver. I had noticed large leaps in my health, and physically, mentally, emotionally. I was continuing on with yoga. I then found Kundalini yoga and started doing that a whole bunch. And then I was looking to become a chef, but I couldn't find any vegan chefing schools. So instead, I went into nutrition because that was just as big of an interest for me. And that school was in Vancouver, called the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. And basically, right when I started that in 2003, I went to like high raw vegan, like strict vegan. Because before that, I was vegetarian, vegan-ish, you know, like I guess you can't say vegan-ish, but I was moving towards that. And then that was when I was like 100%, you know. And it was halfway through that schooling that I went to a vegan health festival, and I met 3 raw foodists. I had read 2 books on raw food. It was, which one was it? The 7 Food Diet Success System, which really intrigued me, but I also was like, I didn't totally understand how to apply it. And I'd always kind of cave at dinner time and not really feel satisfied. Mm-hmm. And the other one was Nature's First Law, where every single chapter ends with cooked food is poison. But so I was really interested in that, but I didn't know how to apply it. And I'd have a couple days here and there all raw, but then I'd always go back to like sweet potatoes and cooked foods for dinner. And I was fermenting and making all my own sauerkrauts, and I had a whole bunch of sprout baskets, sprouting everything in all my windows. And I even had my own sourdoughs, making my own sourdough bread and all that fun stuff. But at that vegan health festival, I met Dr. Doug Graham, and he was wow. Lit up. He was lit up. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, I used to eat a lot of magic mushrooms and go out into nature and see like auras around animals and plants. But Dr. Graham was the first person that I saw that had like a glow emanating off of him without any kind of plant medicines in my body. And I was just like, something's going on here. I'm going to listen to him.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. I went to all of his.
Him.
He's awesome. He's been one of my greatest mentors and then one of my best friends in this whole movement, and always had my back. And I can't speak highly enough. But I went and talked to him afterwards. I told him all my goals. I still wanted to become a professional skateboarder and just feel my absolute best and recover faster. He laid it out for me. He just spent time while he was eating a meal full of blueberries for dinner, just like pounds and pounds of blueberries. Mm-hmm. And the next day I went all raw, like 100%. And I remember walking down the street, my heart center burst open and I was like crying walking down the street because I felt so connected and so one with everything. And I met my purpose because, long story short, before that, all that nutritional training, all the interests, I used to be just reading book after book on nutrition and wellness. It was all just for skateboarding. But that first day raw, my heart opened. And I was like, I actually want to use this as a career, as like a way to teach other people and share this message with other people. Because I didn't plan on doing what I'm doing. Like I don't like public speaking. At least it's been very challenging growth. And now I have come to like it. But I didn't want to utilize any of this knowledge as a career. But that moment that I went all raw, I met my purpose and my life forever changed. And the long story short, to kind of wrap that up, it was another about 4.5 years of really applying the raw food diet, studying under Dr. Graham and other raw foodists that have been walking the walk longer, having a few falls off the wagon and learning and growing through that until I got to a point where I was like, I can't stop. This is something I really want to do. I can't procrastinate. Mm-hmm. And then I started my website, therawadvantage.com. That was now 15 years ago. And that's the only thing I've done full time now since then is just, write recipe books, do retreats, do consultations. And I started with by donation. And, we talked about that before. And some people said, oh, you're undervaluing yourself and you got to charge more. And to be honest, it's my absolute favorite way. I have other packages and I have ways of doing it, but donation based just feels the best to me because I've been helped so much by other people who've given their time, and I really connect with people that don't necessarily have the means to be paying $200 an hour for consultations, because I was always a really poor person when I moved out, and so I still do that. I still love doing it, and I can't imagine doing anything else. This is what I've done full time for 15 years now, and I love it.
Wow, you can definitely see that you're passionate about it and such a kind person overall. And I love when people know where they've come from. Yet, I think that's what a lot of people forget, whether they're, already been vegan for a long time or have been raw for a long time. You get kind of like your mind shifts and you forget where you were, beforehand. And if I'm here, I feel like we're somewhere around the same age because the Walmart, the skateboarding, it just sounds like how my childhood went. I wasn't a professional skateboarder, but I did have one. I think I could stay on it for a few minutes, but, just the whole thing, and I'm like, if I had only heard about this then, I didn't know anything about it till I was 42. So it's amazing how one little thing, and it was because we were looking into sprouting. So it can be like this little thing that nudges you in. I knew nothing about advocating for animals. I knew nothing about vegan really, except I thought those people, weird people, right? Crazy people, growing up how I did. And then now it's just like you said, it becomes such a passion, a part of you. So that is such an amazing journey, from, I think a lot of people don't realize what they're putting in their body. And it's I had that revelation too. I'm like, wait, so everything's connected, because I think the world makes us think if you're hurting, you need a medicine. If you're depressed, you need a medicine. And there's not a whole lot of people out there teaching what you are. Do you remember back to what was it after you were raw that you began to coach people? Do you remember your first person you coached or anything like that?
I do, and it's funny, just from what you mentioned, I just wanted to say too, I remember when I was 13, my sister read A Diet for New America, and she went vegetarian, and I thought she was just crazy. And I'd make T-Rex noises at her and hold up the bacon. I was that kid, so it's just amazing how you can really shift when you start to understand and feel different things in your body. Mm-hmm. I don't remember my first consult that was non-family or friend, but in my schooling at CSNN, they had us do, I believe it was 10 or 20 consults as kind of like just getting used to it. And I don't do it in the exact same format that they showed, but it was a really great way to learn how to get a form in and hone in on trouble points and talk to people. So my first consults definitely were with some families and friends and stuff like that. And once I put myself out there, it started to grow, and it was, like sometimes just a consult every couple of weeks, and then it became more than that and more than that. And but it's been amazing because, like coming with a holistic health background, it's not always about food. Like sometimes people come to me and they just want to talk about food, and other times I talk to people for months and it has nothing to do with food. Like afterwards, like, oh yeah, the food stuff, that's pretty easy. Like eat fruits and vegetables. When you're hungry, eat fruit. When you don't feel like fruit, eat vegetables, and keep the fat low. I mean, that's the absolute simplified version. But there's nuance to everything, but the whole package is the big picture.
And I was I'm going to read a couple of these comments if you're okay with that. Oh, that was back, I think, when your cat popped up, Harmonic. Yeah, they do. I can attest to that. I know that I can hear them from the other room and know what they're asking for. My one cat tells me when the water's empty with a distressing meow. Yes. The other one, there's a treat meow. The other one has he has a disgruntled thing. If I tell him, you can't get in there or get off of that, he'll say, ah! I don't know. It's weird. And Tessa said, I also started feeling horrible because of my lifestyle at around 20. It's interesting how that only happens to some people. Yeah. And I developed like chronic back pain I played a lot of sports basketball, and in my 20s, I gained weight, got the back pain going, and I had went through diets losing weight, but until I went raw, I never got rid of the pain. It was interesting. I guess some stuff was still causing me like inflammation. I'm so glad Tesla's been raw. I think she's coming up on 5 years, maybe. I also cried when I went raw, she said, because I was sad that I wasn't going to be able to have the lifestyle I used to, considered cool, aka drinking, going out to restaurants. Yeah, that's another thing. When you said you might talk to people about not even food, is that what a lot of it entails, is the social aspect?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is, like, obviously at first is the application of the foods and making sure that you get enough so that you're satisfied and you're not just bonking and, craving and binging and stuff like that. But once you start to get through that and the honeymoon stage of the raw food diet starts to wear off, where you're just like so emphatic and so like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, just feeling that drastic shift, it's just a cellular expansion. Then all of a sudden some of those other things come in, and social and emotional issues are typically the two biggest. And then I find after that, it becomes even more kind of like recognizing that you're doing things for yourself and your loved ones may not want to, and beating your head against that, trying to tell them they should be doing something, but they don't want to. But, that is a big thing, the social aspects. I feel really lucky in the sense that because I grew up skateboarding, and that's often been kind of a black sheep activity, at least especially in the 80s. Now it's a little more accepted, but 80s, 90s, it was pretty black sheep. I got pretty used to being a little bit of an outcast, and I didn't really care. And I'm semi-antisocial. I consider myself a social chameleon. My tendencies are to kind of recluse a little bit more, but I'm pretty good at kind of getting out there and connecting too. But because of that, it hasn't been too hard on me. But that said, I've found ways for it to be a heck of a lot easier, which we can definitely make it more fun and cool. It's hard to say cool because as soon as you say something's cool, people say it's not cool anymore. But,
right.
There are ways to mesh and mingle, whether it's going out to restaurants or with friends that are drinking. And, I can really identify my first 8 months with raw food. I completely avoided the bar and any situation that was, like around that, because I really have addictive tendencies. And in that time, I was like, that's not safe. Like, I'm just a little teeny candle that could easily be wiped out and back to drinking. So I stayed away. But after years now, like, I'll go to the bar with friends, or I'll go to places. I have friends that snort coke, and I don't mind if they're doing it around me if that's their game. I mean, I'm not encouraging it, but
right.
I'm not going to be like judging and telling them they shouldn't, unless they want to talk about it. You know, and going out to restaurants can definitely go do that.
You're not wiping it out of the way and putting a banana in front of them, right?
No, exactly. Yeah, no. I used to be a raw vegan evangelist that would, you know, like, have you heard the good word? And like, oh, like, you know, like, but now I really just let my example shine. And if people ask questions, which often they do, and they see you sitting with a whole pile of bananas or drinking, you know, 2-liter banana smoothies or looking more happy and boisterous than most, then, you know, they might ask, and then I'm always happy to share. But I'm mindful of my energy too, because, you know, while this lifestyle definitely brings you an abundance of energy and a desire to connect and share and grow, you can also bring yourself to be low if you're just always putting it out and you're attached to other people's, you know, stories, right? Because everyone's on their own journey, you know. So I learned that the hard way. But yeah, we can go into any of this stuff. It's lots of fun, and I love the questions and comments. It's lots of fun.
I love it, and I think that that's part of a lot of people who take on this lifestyle are different in a way. Like, you know, I was always kind of like that person in my family too, like, you know, that just did things a little differently than the norm, you know. So it was not a total shock, but it was like, wait, what are you doing now? You know, I remember my mom, this is a funny quick story. She was like, when I went raw, she was like, okay. And then I went back, I was telling you through the different versions of the diet. And she's like, I remember saying when I went in that strict only fruit for just a brief period of time without vegetables. And she was like, now you don't eat salad? Like, she just was like, what do you eat? Like, but yeah, it definitely, Muriel, I'm the same way. That's a great question. That's where I had to add the salads and avocado. I feel like a little bit more fat in the evening helps me. Do you have any suggestions for Muriel?
Yeah, absolutely. The evenings is a hard part for people, and there's two things that I would mention with that. One, something that helps a lot of people is to start their evening meal with fruit, because the most common reason people bonk and have a hard time on the diet is just simply under eating calories, especially on a lower fat kind of dietary approach. So starting with fruit, one that kind of gets that sweet tooth gone, is fast acting, it absorbs quick, so our hunger is kind of curbed a little bit, but it's also so fast digesting that by the time, like I usually would say, like, you know, make a fruit portion, almost assume it's like the whole meal. So it can still be a lot, but eat it. And then once you finish, then make your salad, because that gives you like 10, 15 minutes for it to kind of digest and the water content to go into through your stomach wall. And then by the time you're ready for your salad, you're game on, and you're really stoked. You'll still eat a giant portion, but maybe not so much that you lend to overburdening your digestive system, or looking to eat too much fat, or are looking for something sweet after. Because if you have your salad and then you're like looking for something sweet after, all that really says is that you didn't get enough carbohydrate before your meal. And when I say the fruit before, I would typically recommend subacid or acid fruits, you know, so, you know, not sweet fruits. I wouldn't eat a big banana smoothie and then have like a big salad with tomatoes and fat on it. But instead, if you have something like, you know, orange juice or mangoes or even melons, I like to have like watermelon orange juice sometimes before, or like a honeydew before. That really, really helps, so that you're not, again, like really craving or really overdoing the fat or looking for sweet stuff after. And then otherwise, for the actual kind of savory part, because I'm sure that some people are like, oh, what, more fruit? Like, come on, what's the real tip? The other tip is to find some recipes. Typically, like if you can find 5 dinner recipes that you love, you know, that are satiating and fairly easy to make, and you just really, really enjoy, then all of a sudden it becomes super easy, you know. And like we were talking about before, you mentioned that, you know, you said boring, you know, but you said you like to just eat the same thing sometimes, you know. And I'm kind of the same. Like over the years, I've maybe found, you know, I've been doing this 20 years, but I honestly could say over the 20 years, I've probably found like 10, 15 like staple recipes that became my absolute favorites. And, you know, I'd find a favorite and I'd be so in love with it that I would eat it for sometimes weeks or months at a time, until I was like, you know what, I'm actually over that. Now I got to find a new one. But eventually I'd get back to that old one, you know, so it keeps on kind of leapfrogging back and forth. And it really does just take experimenting, you know, trying out different recipes and finding those ones you absolutely love. Things that I find really help people with their satiation, not only in terms of just like enjoyment, but nutrient sufficiency, are going to be based around usually some fruit veggie. So that could be tomatoes, zucchini, cucumber, peppers. as a bit of a base, and then having some kind of a sauce that has some sweetness, some tanginess, you know, some creaminess, so a little bit of fat to it, and also includes an abundance of leafy greens or heartier vegetables that kind of match that same dense nutrition ratio. So some examples that I'd say, Muriel, my cat's getting her automatic feeder right now, so that's just
I love it.
yes. It saves me in the mornings when she wants food at 5 a.m. and I don't want to be up at 5 a.m.
Definitely. I love that. And she pulls it down.
No, it just automatically goes.
Oh, it automatically comes out. Okay.
It automatically comes out. So I will mention as a shameless plug that my free app has over 150 free recipes in it. And within that, there are a lot of the ones that I would consider some of my like favorite go-tos. So one of my first recipes that I found that I couldn't have enough of, I call Presto sun-dried tomato pesto. And it's just basically some veggie noodles. I like I like zucchini zoodles, but some people prefer koodles, cucumber noodles. And
I love that. I never heard the koodles. My mom got me this really neat contraption that I haven't even gotten out of the box yet. So she doesn't understand, but she's supportive and buys me a bunch of cool raw food stuff. But I'm like, I haven't used it. So I'm like, I can't wait to get your app downloaded. I was going to mention it if you didn't. I was like, Muriel, we need the app. And look, she may already have it.
I hope you guys both check it out. It is really good. It's got a lot of recipes, got lots of videos, and it has all my books, almost all my books on there for 33% off the price from my web shop. So it's a cheaper way of getting all my recipes too. But within there, you know, there's those noodles. One of the other noodles I love to make is, I call them Napa noodles, but it's Napa cabbage just sliced really, really thin. I don't love salads, but I love noodles. So even if I'm eating romaine or iceberg or almost any, like kale, anything, I usually just slice it really thin into noodles. And for me, the mouthfeel, I like it way more. But that Presto tomato pesto is just some kind of a noodle. And then it's a tomato-based pesto sauce with tomatoes, some hemp seeds, and a bit of sun-dried tomatoes pulsed in. And then I throw in big handfuls of spinach, arugula, and basil, and just pulse it until it's like a really thick green pesto sauce. I love that. I also got into marinaras and making noodles with like a really thick tomato sauce, so that's also in there. I love stews, which is kind of similar to that Presto sauce, but instead I do a tomato mango base, and then I pulse in cilantro, arugula, and sometimes spinach, or sometimes just cilantro and arugula, and I chunk it up. So it's like I don't blend it till it's a green puree. I just pulse it in so it's really chunky, and then I pour that over top of chunks of any vegetables that I love. But some of my most classic is bok choy stems and tomato chunks and zucchini chunks. You know, and lately, you know, my most recent kind of favorite, which has been probably my favorite recipe now for about, it might be like 6 or 7 years, is my curries. And I just love to make really thick, hearty curries. And I have that in my app and on my website as well, called Chris's Creamy Curry or Cocoa Butter Veggies. Yeah, sushi snakes too. They're so good. I make almost anything, and then I just put them in some raw vegan nori, which I have a discount code. I can mention it, but I just put it in the sushi paper and wrap it up, and it's like a burrito. It's like the quickest, easiest burrito. But I hope that helps a little bit. Oh, you love the app already. And Greek salad is so good.
Yeah, that's the secret was already in your phone, Muriel. It was already there. We just weren't using it. That is amazing. Like, you have no idea. I feel like, you know, God or the universe brings things into our life. And I was just literally telling him right before, like, you guys know, Dawn is on this, you know, she'll go raw for a while, but she also is like Muriel. And some points after that will need a comfort food, I feel like. And it gets like, it's not that hard for me because I've now been, you know, raw for a while. However, every now and then when I smell like the spaghetti, or even if I'm helping prepare something for her, you know, it'll get in there a little bit. Like, I wonder if I could find a version of this that would also help her stay raw and maybe not go for the, you know, burger, the vegan burger, or the, you know, regular vegan spaghetti, because she really wants to. But I think it's after a while we emotional eating I wanted to get into too, because I know in a different interview I heard you talking about how powerful that can be if you're in a stressful situation, or maybe I'm gonna send her the replay of this. I think she's in a Zoom call for her work, but I was hoping she could listen to this, because I know she'd have some questions too, because she kind of craves that stuff during the day. So it would just, and she likes fruit in the evening. So it would kind of just switch it around for her. And she could maybe bulk prepare at night one of those meals. And curry was another thing that was her favorite at Agent Food. So I'm like, this, we definitely are going to buy some of your products and get on board with that.
Check it all out. And I got so much free stuff too. So you can just, scroll through the app or on my website. And, that's something that's kind of interesting, because my first 5 years with raw food, when I started, it was really, really simple. I was like strict hygienist, no garlic, onions, hot peppers, spices, anything at all. It was really just fruits and greens. And I have 2 books that really represent that, with over 150 recipes that are just simple 1 to 5 ingredient recipes that I would consider like the backbone of a really good, clean raw food diet. But then I also saw a need for more kind of slightly gourmet, but not high fat gourmet with salts and oils and, really exotic superfoods and stuff like that. Something more accessible that also mimicked old favorites. And that's what I've often called cravings busters recipes, which, they're supposed to mimic nostalgic foods, and they can be a little bit hardier, but still really good digesting and, really good for health. And, I find often that's what it takes, is finding your old favorites. So that's a good way to kind of look at it. Like, what are your old favorite cuisines? What are your old favorite dishes? And can you find an alternative that's raw that you enjoy just as much, or at the very least, that in the big picture, considering like how you feel before, during, and after, is better in the big picture? Because, for me in my time with the raw food diet, I've tried everything. I've tried higher fat. I've tried some really simple cooked stuff just to see how it feels in my body. And I've tried lower fat raw gourmet, like I talk about. And for me, definitely it's the lower fat raw gourmet if I feel like something a little bit extra, because in my journey personally, if I do try something that has cooked food in it, it drives me to want to eat more cooked food, and it gets kind of in my head. Whereas when I eat the low fat gourmet, even though it's like amazing and simple and still super healthful, it usually actually leads me to wanting to eat a little bit simpler, more of those other kind of 151 recipes that I talked about. So then that way it keeps me streamlined with this, and still totally satiated. And I'll mention too, just like, something I discovered maybe about 7 years ago or so, 6 or 7 years ago, was freezing hardier vegetables and greens at times, and even sprouts at times. And what it does is the water in the vegetables, say broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, even things like onions or Brussels sprouts or chickpeas that have been soaked and sprouted, the water inside those foods, it expands as it freezes, which ruptures the cell wall of the plant, of the cellulose. And then when you thaw it out, it kind of softens and it's easier to digest and it feels like cooked food. So I might make a curry that is still all raw food, some of the ingredients frozen and thawed, and some of the ingredients like mushrooms partially dehydrated. And I've served it to people and they don't even know that it's a raw food dish, because it just feels like a cooked food dish and is heartier, but it feels way lighter and cleaner in the system. But again, it is still a little bit more comforting than just having a salad with a mango dressing, So I like to try and showcase these as well as ways to bust those cravings without getting into the emotional aspect, just getting into the food and nostalgia aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we can definitely go into the emotional side of eating and coming into a better relationship with ourselves, with food, and with discomfort, there is a time and a place to be eating foods for reasons other than just nutrition. Or at the very least, most of us are going to probably do that at some point in our life. They're going to want something that's a little bit more comforting, a little bit more hearty, and having those options are great. I want to say one last thing though too. I know for me, at a part of my raw food journey, I looked at cooked food as bad, and that if I had cooked foods, I was like a bad person or a failing, or it would make me have a harder time to reach my goals. It led me to actual mental kind of hardships because of that, and emotional hardships and judgment of myself and other people. And, as a coach, I've definitely learned and grown through that, and talking with hundreds and hundreds of people, that, having that viewpoint isn't really self-serving, and it doesn't really help other people that much. Being really compassionate towards self and recognizing that not all cooked foods are the same, and simply steamed or boiled vegetables, they don't have any toxins formed. They don't feel quite as nice in the system. And having those as an option, if you're not like must be strict 100% raw, can be great for some people for transition, or can be great as a high raw diet, and all of that is great and fair game if that's what serves you. But having those things on the table puts less strain mentally, emotionally on you. And it may even lead you to letting them go, with like I did, where I just once I allowed myself to have those foods, I came to realize I just feel so much better with raw food. I don't want that. And then that made, this other stuff that I make way easier to stick with.
That's amazing. And I love like that mantra. Like, I feel like people do well when they think about what they're adding in rather than what they're necessarily eliminating. Obviously, we know it's there in the back of our mind, but if we have something else to focus our energy on, and like you said, working through those emotional issues of what that means about emotional eating, I'm sure you can help people with. Before we go into that next part, in case people are new or just new to raw, can you just briefly explain, and I want to ask Tessa's question too, that's an interesting one, but before that, while we're on this topic, and can you explain what you mean by there was no toxins formed? I know a lot of the people who are already raw know what you mean, but just in case there's a new raw person here, what is the benefit of raw food over cooked food as far as how it reacts in our body, if you don't mind, from your holistic, health perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, depending upon the food and how high of temperatures you cook it in, and the medium for which you cook it in, different toxins can be formed. With plant products, it's a little less than with animal products. There are more even known cancer-causing byproducts of high broil grilling or high heat grilling and baking and stuff like that. But even carbohydrates put in the oven above, I think it's I can't remember, it's 230 degrees or something like that. When those carbohydrates brown, a substance known as acrylamide forms, which is known to be cancer-causing. And also just nutrients are destroyed and or diminished. Enzymatic activity is diminished. It makes certain foods that are not super palatable and easy to digest more digestible. But the way I kind of look at it is, every single creature on the planet is designed to thrive on its species-specific diet in its whole natural state. That's how every single living being has come into and grown through their process, right? The only animals that eat cooked foods besides us are those that scavenge off us, or that we have domesticated and just feed out of our convenience. And, they are shown to have the same kind of debilitating degenerative diseases that we get. So, the benefits of eating raw food really just come down to feeling way better, getting the most nutrition for the least amount of digestive effort, especially when we're talking about fruit and young, tender leafy greens. And oftentimes when it's in popular culture where they speak out against raw food, they might say something like, that certain foods are higher in nutrients when you cook them. They'll talk about tomatoes, for example, and the lycopene, but they're not really telling the whole truth. And so often in nutrition, they talk about nutrition per gram, but we don't really eat in grams, because you could have I would need 23 kilos, say, of watermelon to get my total caloric need, whereas I only need maybe 4.5 kilos of bananas, and so, sorry, it'd be 23 pounds versus 8 pounds. But, we don't really work in grams, because every food can be so vastly different based on the fiber content and the water content. But we do deal with calories. We consistently eat a certain number of calories if we're maintaining our weight, or more if we're gaining, and less if we're losing. And when we look at nutrition per calorie, fruits and vegetables reign supreme. They are the best foods, the number one sources or number two sources of virtually every single nutrient that is foodborne that we can look at. And when they compare the tomatoes, they're talking about grams. So they might say 200 grams of cooked tomatoes is better than 200 grams of raw tomatoes, but they're not really saying that 200 grams of cooked tomatoes was also probably 400 grams of fresh tomatoes. So, they're doubling the tomato content and taking away the water, and then, making the lycopene slightly more bioavailable, but they also don't mention that part of the lycopene is destroyed. And then they also don't mention how much lycopene do we need? Can we get enough from raw foods? And when you actually look at the bigger picture, it doesn't really make sense to be cooking tomatoes for lycopene. We can get enough raw foods, and it doesn't destroy the other nutrients. So they may single out one nutrient and go, oh, this one nutrient is higher. Well, what about the dozens of others that are diminished and or destroyed?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like, to me, cooking food is a way to make foods that aren't really a part of our species specific diet, or foods that we could easily eat in large quantities, digest well, and enjoy, more palatable. And it's definitely had a role in our history to allow our species to thrive when we're living in areas where we couldn't get enough of our optimal foods. But when we come back to, hey, we're now in the Garden of Eden again, we can be eating the foods that we're the most designed and adapted to.
From anywhere in the world, basically, really.
Yeah, we can do it everywhere in the world. And it feels the best. I mean, to me, that's like, you can go down the rabbit hole of science, and there's so much science that shows why raw food and fruits and vegetables are super, super healthy, the best food choices we can make. But to me, what it comes down to is just how it makes you feel. Like, after doing this for 20 years and talking to thousands of people at different festivals and retreats, I've only met one person who says they feel better with cooked food. And when I talk to other people who have gained sufficiency and, have really come into their own with raw food, like figured out how to do it and are consistently getting enough, everyone agrees. Like, it feels better. Like, you feel lighter, you feel more happy, you feel more buoyant.
Mentally, right? Like, it's more connected. I feel like that's the biggest thing, it's so much gratitude. It's hard to explain. Like, you just feel more like connected. I agree with you. I've experienced that just the same. And seemingly the more fruit I eat also, and the less like other things, but I still truly believe in getting the minerals from, the greens, and I was not doing that. And I was going to say, the person that felt better on cooked food, I have a strange feeling that they may not have been getting all the proper nutrients or eating enough, because I struggled with that in the beginning. I just ate one salad and I was still intermittent fasting, like my old diet. And I obviously went back to cooked food thinking I needed rice to gain weight, because I lost too much weight. I started losing energy. Like, you can do it wrong, which is why I always recommend to meet with someone like you, who is a health coach and can help you kind of with how to do it. Like, don't go through all the, we all heard that as kids, though, but we never listened. It was the good advice we didn't take. But like, if you're new to this and want to make it work, and you hear these benefits, you don't want it, to cook your food. None of us want to form acrylamides on our food. But like you said, like, baked potato is what they consider health food in many cases, and baking, I would assume, is one of the higher. We're baking it at like 500 degrees or 400. I guess I don't know what you use in Canada, but it's a very high temperature, and it's considered a health food. And we're putting something that's, and it's such a general thing. It's almost like, I sometimes feel I just want people to be vegan and help the animals. And then there's that whole nother level that they have to get to, but it's a journey. Like, sometimes people will come into raw. Sometimes you have to go back and forth with it, So I do agree they feel best. And some people, even experience like symptoms of cold symptoms, like I've done in the past, going off on a binge of junk vegan food after being raw for a while. So your body even will tell you, like, you know what? Yeah, I don't like this.
Absolutely. We learn so much through those contrasts. And to me, we're living in the land of the two poles. And it's through visiting both of those poles that we find our middle, and we find what really works the absolute best. And when it comes to foods that are outside of raw foods, I don't like to look as good and bad, but rather like, good, better, best, And so when we're talking about cooked baked potatoes or baked potatoes, like, obviously that's going to be better than going to Tim Hortons or to, like a restaurant, getting some crazy processed foods and stuff like that. But then, boiled is going to be better than that. And, steamed maybe slightly better than that. And then better than that is just eating fruits, raw fruits that are even better for you, and easier assimilated carbohydrate that burns even simpler, cleaner, and has higher levels of vitamins that are susceptible to heat damage, So, and it often, again, it comes down to allowing oneself to experience and experiment and have all these foods as options to then come to more of a clear wisdom through experience that isn't shadowed by guilt or negative emotions towards those foods, to come to that clarity like this is actually what feels best, and that's what I want to do most of the time. And if I do that other thing, I'm not a bad person. It doesn't like throw my health down into the toilet, but
Yeah.
to me that just allows things to be a little bit easier and more streamlined towards a direction rather than thinking it's like black or white.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's a very important thing I think people don't realize is how you cook the food matters too. If you want that, warmer food or that steamed, veggie, then that would be better than the alternative of just, cooking it forever. And
Yeah.
I was wondering how you feel about, I know some of your recipes, I don't know what percentages, I don't have the book or the app yet, but
Yeah.
the dehydrator, could that be a way, to help people transition if they might want to wrap to go around their food, or do you feel that might take them into cooked food, or do you have a lot of recipes with dehydrator, and what's your opinion on that?
I bet you, because I mean, I haven't counted all my recipes, but I'm sure I have like 400. No, actually, I have. Yes, I have like near 500. I would think maybe 10-15% of them utilize a dehydrator, but most of them that require dehydrator are just partially dehydrated. There's very few that are fully dehydrated. And in my experience, anyway, utilizing those foods actually leads again back to wanting to eat more simple more of the time, and then having those as kind of like the nostalgic kind of fun food meals. And most of the time, if it's something that is more dehydrated, let's say like a wrap or something like that, it's one part of it that's more dehydrated, but with a whole bunch of fresh stuff around, like the whole filling is all fresh, and having maybe again some fruit before, so it becomes a pretty small part of the meal. But it can definitely lead to more satiation, a little bit more kind of like festivity to the meal, and also more fun sharing with other people, because sometimes that's also a great thing to do, is to make meals that you can share with your friends and family, that they don't feel like they're just eating some carrot sticks and
Yeah.
lettuce and like think you're a crazy person, and to have those kind of festive meals to share is really fun for family and for celebrations and community and potlucks and all that fun stuff.
And all of the links are in the description. And I also like to add them in the comments for people that were new to YouTube like me, because I could never figure out how to get to the description for like a month. I remember like clicking it and something happened on my phone. And I'm like, how do you get to these descriptions? Well, that was a long time ago. I'm kind of ancient. So I'm sure people know how to use it now. But I just always find it's easier when I always go to the comments. I think everybody does. Whenever you see a comment after a video, does everybody click on it, or am I just nosy? But Tessa, I was just curious. Well, before we do that, can you just tell me real quick what your, like, if you can explain to them what your website and everything is, just so they can hear it out loud
No, for
before
sure.
I don't know how much longer you have, so I want to get that in.
Absolutely. Yeah. My website's called therawadvantage.com, and it's my hub where you can connect to all my social media. It's got all my recipes and interviews and topic-based videos, and pages about my yoga and skateboarding history and all those kinds of things.
Love it.
Links to my app, my contact me, and my shop. I got a lot of t-shirts and stuff. I got my Peace, Love, and Seasonal Fruit going on all day, every day.
I love that.
So it's got a lot of stuff, but you can reach me there, and then it can branch out into any other social media. If you want to find me on Instagram, I do lots of stories and posts and stuff like that. But I've pretty much been doing a video every week for the last, I guess, 15 plus years, 16 years. I don't know, since 2011. A little bit less. Yeah, a little bit less.
That's amazing. So look at all this experience. And the skateboarding thing, can you do those like things that look like this? Like, is
Yeah,
that
the big half pipes. I can do those. That's not my specialty, but I can ride pretty much everything. And the thing I've specialized more in is street skateboarding and some parks and stuff like that. But I like the big ramps too. They're fun.
That's amazing. What was I gonna ask you about? I used to like sneak to the what we called like the back road. When I was like around 12, there was one of those over there. And then like I used to at my old house, I used to just love watching skateboarding. Like it was just so cool, like, and I know they had like the skater clothes and
Yeah.
the skater boys. I wasn't really allowed to hang out back there being so young, but I would ride my bike around, and I remember getting in trouble once, like, were you back there watching the skateboards? I was like, I'm okay. I can go there now. I'm old enough, right? 12. Now probably nowadays kids grow up quicker, right? They already have like iPhones and stuff. And then like where I used to live, there was a skate park right across the street. So I was like, I can't wait to check out some of your work. And what is a skateboarding competition like? How did you compete in that? And were you still raw when you were skateboarding? I mean, were you raw when you were skateboarding? Did you feel like that improved your performance?
Absolutely. I mean, really, again, the main reason I got into nutrition from the beginning was to recover faster for skateboarding so I could do it better and more, and continually improving my lifestyle. My diet has only led me to recover faster and be able to skateboard more, because I'm now 43, 44 this summer. And, I feel dang good. I mean, I can't lie and say that I feel absolutely better than I was a
really
teenager.
young.
I don't feel better than a teenager, but I recover fast. Like I was in a near-death motorcycle accident 5 years ago and had to relearn to walk, and I was full-time in rehab for a year. And I also have fractured my back over a decade ago, and I've broken many, many bones. And my doctors, my PTs, my surgeons, they're all like, my chiropractor, they're all amazed. Like my chiropractor's like, you heal better than anyone I've ever seen. My doctors have said I heal generally in about 2/3 the time, somewhere around there, compared to like other people that they see healing well. So that's what's really kept me able to skateboard and still have fun and push myself. And I actually finally did become professional. I got a couple boards now that I have on my wall that I'm still trying to push myself and put out some of my best skateboarding. And it's definitely allowed me to just heal faster, have more energy. Again, I don't recover as fast as I did when I was a teenager, but for my age, I recover very, very well, and helps with inflammation and just staying light and fit, and is a game changer for sure.
That is amazing. And I don't know exactly why you would need, I mean, like I told people at work, but not right away, about my diet. Do you have any advice for Tessa? I wanted to answer a few of these questions. I wish I had thought about this too. I could have put up I'm sure you have some videos of you skateboarding. I could have did it for this live, maybe next time if you come on. But your new boss, about your diet, I don't know if maybe you might want to give a little more info. Is it that you work in the food industry, or?
Yeah, what the specific trouble is, because that could go in many different directions. Like if it's because you need more time at lunch, or they don't allow you to sit and have your salad. Like the common things that I come up against when I'm consulting people, those are the big things. And some of the easiest solutions are just to bring smoothies. When you're at work, just when you're hungry, just have a smoothie. Make it super simple on yourself. So sometimes it's easiest just to make like a big smoothie, then put that into two containers, and if they have a fridge there, put them in the fridge, and then have one when you're hungry, and then one later when you're hungry again. And otherwise, if it's like, because of social outings or anything like that, I mean, the biggest things that I've found to be helpful is to not make it a bigger deal than it is. Like sometimes we can build it up and build our identity around this and think that we're so different from everyone else. And the reality is food is just one aspect, and we're always more similar to other people than different. And it just comes down to, what are we focusing on? If we're focusing on differences, we create a rift between people and we make it a big deal. Instead, we focus on similarities, and we don't go in there going, oh, I'm a raw vegan for life and I'm never eating cooked food and I've never done it. And you're a murderer when you eat meat. And I can't believe you do that. And don't you know how, instead we're just like, yeah, I eat a lot of raw foods. It makes me feel really good. This is what I love, and then like, don't feel like we have to over explain, and if somebody starts asking lots of questions, it can be as simple as saying like, I don't know all the science, but I read this one book called 80-10-10 or whatever is your favorite book. And it really made sense. So this is what I'm trying, and it feels so good. Like I just feel so dang good. So I'm just continuing with it, and you could even add, like, it's a little bit challenging sometimes being around other people eating other food, but I just feel so good. I would love if you could support me in that. And, I don't want to make a bigger deal than it has to be. I'm just doing this because it feels great, and usually then people want to support you if you ask for a little help and you're a little bit vulnerable, that maybe it feels a little uncomfortable. And also deferring, like I said, like to a book or to another source, and not necessarily feeling like you have to be the expert that explains everything to them. that makes it a lot easier for individuals.
That is excellent advice. I love that. And I feel like so blessed because in where I work, I have to actually put the email together here in a little bit after our live, but I'm able to send out, like, be part of the newsletter, and I'm allowed to put a health tip. So while, it allows me to kind of squeeze in there like some good benefits of raw food, and telling people to eat more of it. So like you said, though, you want to get to know people first. And I feel like they wouldn't even listen, probably, like you said. That's a little off the wall. But sometimes when we're new to this, we do want to go in and tell people like that. Like literally, I've been on interviews. I forget who it was, but he literally said he went in to dinner with his friends and called them murderers, basically. So,
Yeah.
it definitely can happen when you get passionate. And a lot of us come into this for diet, and then we go down the raft, and we see so much and hear so much, we become really strict vegan, and it's difficult to watch the world around you, and socialize, and be part of it. So it's definitely, I love that you're also a lifestyle coach, because I feel like you would be great at helping people to kind of, you're not so black and white. You understand that the world happens, and you're very, it sounds like you would be a great life coach as well as a nutritionist. You know so much, obviously. I could tell you had to cut yourself off when you started talking about the benefits of raw food. I bet you could have went on and on. And I want to respect your time, but also, I don't know, do you have another few minutes for the rest of the questions, or?
I have as much time as you like. I enjoy this a lot, and I love questions, and can definitely go into anything you guys want to until you feel like it's as long as you want to go here.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a person waiting for you, like a client, and I was holding you up. Thank you. I should have asked before, so it wasn't.
No worries. I made sure I have a bunch of time after this. So.
Okay, awesome. Let me get through a couple of these, and then we'll wrap up, because I know it is like a holiday. Oh, I missed the last one. Wait a minute. That was a long one here. Somebody commented. What did I just have up there? I forgot to read that one first. Now my thing wants to freeze up, of course. 1 second here. I think it was something to do with, she was asking if you wanted to ever come on. Oh, Michelle, that's it. Michelle won a free product on our last live. Congratulations. Chris should come back with a raw food example, but have Jen also follow along as they make something together. Plus, Jen, you get to try something new. Oh, that's awesome. We may have to talk about that if
that could be fun for sure.
Interested. Definitely. I love the demo. I think that would really help people to see it and see the finished product. But you can see a lot of that too, right over. Like, I love your YouTube and your Instagram. I forget what it was I saw you making. Was it the curry just recently?
I made a banana curry recently, which sounds crazy, but it's so dang good. And yeah, you're spot on. I mean, I think I have 150 recipe videos on my website. They're all free, and they're also on my app. So we've got loads and loads. But it'd be really fun to come together and make something that that you're excited about, that you see from any of my stuff. We could do a demo. That'd be a lot of fun.
That would be awesome. I'm gonna look up the app right now. I shouldn't be looking down while we're on this, but I got excited, and I'm like, I want to see what it looks like. This is
got the banner on it. It's easy to spot if you go into the app store, right? The Raw Advantage, you'll pop right up. It's Raw Advantage Raw Recipes.
Got it. Thank you, Michelle. That's an awesome idea. I need to get a setup in the kitchen where, like, my kitchen is like, I think they forgot and squeezed it in when they finished the whole house. So I'm like, how I need to situate my kitchen so that I can cook. Maybe I'll just cook right here, right? It's raw. I don't need a stove. Yeah. Raw cabbage rolls. Oh, is that one of your recipes too?
Absolutely, yeah. And she was mentioning that with freezing, because what you do is you take a whole cabbage and you freeze the whole cabbage, and then when you take it out, you just run it under some warm water, and slowly, once the cabbage leaves off, peel off whole cabbage leaves, and then you make I make like a filling, out of a bunch of different ingredients, and you wrap it with the frozen and thawed cabbage leaves, and it literally tastes like cooked cabbage rolls, and it's really, really good. I have the whole recipe on my site as well as I have a borscht recipe, which I find goes really well together to be kind of classic Ukrainian Russianish recipes with, like, the tomato beet tomato beet soup and the cabbage rolls. It's ridiculous. And some raw vegan sour cream. Delicious, delicious.
That's amazing. Like I'm like in awe that there are these kind of recipes, because this will really help me for those people who are cooked food vegan that might just like, I can't do that. Like what am I gonna do when I have a party and I have, especially people like, I'm sort of similar to you. I work from home, my other job. I do this most of my spare time and maybe go to the beach in the summer a little bit to, enjoy myself. But I don't do a whole lot of like out every night, so or have people constantly over, you know what I mean? So but if you do, that's, I think, makes it more challenging, and having these little bit of recipes to have in your, in your kitchen or in your mind that you can come up with to, you want to do a pizza night, you have a way to do a raw pizza. I think it was on the health food show. I saw your raw food health show or something on that interview, and he just kept raving about that pizza looks good. And I was like, he's making me want that pizza right now.
It's funny. I have 2 pizza crusts in the dehydrator right now because I have a raw food retreat this weekend, and we're having falafels the first night. So I already have 140 falafel balls already, and it's really fun too with some of those. Like I made a whole bunch and then I put them in the freezer, and then I could just pop them out into the dehydrator for like 1 hour and then they're ready, So it's like you can batch make things so that you can make it a lot easier on yourself when you want that fancy night any week or month later, right? And pizza crusts last really well. They can be frozen as well. We're also going to be making curry, and then we're going to have a lot of simple stuff. And to me, that's one of the joys of the raw food lifestyle is like, you can make it as simple as you want. Like really, it can go back to, like I said, like when you're hungry, just eat the fruits you love and have them with greens if you want. When you don't feel like fruit, have greens and simple salads and fruit veggies and a little bit of nuts and seeds. So it can be really simple, like, the ultimate fast food, just peel it and eat it. Or you can spend a bit of time in the kitchen if you want to make something a little bit more fancy and share it with other people. Or for that time, you want something that's a little bit more nostalgic or a teeny bit more kind of comforting, right? So
right.
It can meet you wherever you're at, and it can really suit whatever your mood is or whatever your needs are. But it's way more loving in action than going down to the corner store and getting processed foods or heavily cooked and salted and oiled foods and stuff like that. It just feels so much better in the system.
And I think like when I began eating raw, I had to eat a lot more than I do now. Like, so also remembering like to, consult a coach like you to make sure you're getting, your nutrients and calories and everything. Because it definitely makes, if you're starting out and you want to try it, there's definitely a way to, I'm not going to say right and wrong because it's not, that way, but there are some things that are pretty key that I think we've all been through if we've been doing it a while.
Absolutely. I mean, there's predictable ways to have a harder time and to barely survive on a raw food diet. And I've met people who went off the raw food diet because they weren't doing it in a way that was streamlined for success, and other people too, though, who did the lifestyle in a way that was like great food wise, but they're super stressed individuals, or they're focusing on things they don't want, or they're having a really hard time socially. And again, they're focusing on the things that they feel like they're missing out with, or feeling like they're so different. And so they're creating a division between themselves and other people, and they fail to thrive, But when we focus on similarities and we look at this as a whole health picture, not just raw food diet, but raw food, holistic lifestyle, that's when we can really come into ourselves and grow in so many ways, socially and emotionally, and learn to thrive.
I found one of the things that you said earlier interesting too, when you said that you like made that connection of, wow, so what I put in really matters that much, because like you said, we don't think of our body. We look at like inanimate objects. I talk about it all the time, like our car and our, making sure our pipes don't freeze or whatever, making sure our drains aren't clogged in the sinks. And yet our own, we just filter it in thinking it doesn't matter. And I find that, it's like we treat ourselves bad, and then that makes us mentally treat ourselves bad in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. That's one of the big things too. Like everyone knows that like treating themselves well with food and sleep and exercise is healthy, and it's a part of a longevity, disease-free lifestyle. But what I find is with raw food, I want to do those things. Like when I'm eating simply raw food, like I want to get my sleep. I actually enjoy my exercise and want to move. Whereas on any other approach, I felt like I wanted to stimulate myself and stay up and never sleep. And I didn't want to exercise. I felt like I should and had to force myself into it. And so it's just when we focus on one of our health links, it just kind of doubles down and makes all the other ones easier, and it becomes more enjoyable.
Oh, that's awesome. I completely see where you're coming from and agree with that too. Because if you don't feel motivated to do those other things, if you're not getting enough sleep, sometimes I don't feel like eating the
Yeah.
same way I always do. Like I'm starving when I don't sleep very much. I don't know if anyone else is like that, but I'm like, it almost is a bit harder for me to stay like with only fruit and not have higher fat during the day. And so it really does, whether it's sleep or those times when I've went off to not eating, my raw diet, I didn't exercise. You're exactly right. That's amazing. That's a
Like
good
attracts like. If you feel like crap, you're more likely to reach out for crap, and to self-affirm that. But then it doubles it and it makes it worse. And then you start rolling down that hill and just looking around you and looking for any other bad habit that can affirm the crap that you're feeling, So it takes creating some space and growing emotionally and being okay with feeling uncomfortable so that we can get through it and then make a choice that actually feels better for ourselves rather than just that knee jerk instant gratification, self-affirming kind of modality, but that takes time. And that's kind of like we said before, it's like, sometimes it's just learning about the raw food, and then it's breaking through some social barriers, and then it's connecting with selves and our emotional connection to food and that relationship we have, not only with food and ourselves, but with the present moment. Like most of us don't want to feel what we feel, and being okay with feeling things, knowing that it's just transient and that we're better suited to actually allow things to move through us rather than to stifle it down and cover it up and numb it out with food, because that just makes it worse and it makes it knock on our head later louder and gets harder and harder. So the more we can just come to accept that life has some challenging times. Raw food is great, but it doesn't solve everything. It doesn't make life just rainbows magically. And being okay to feel things that are challenging and move through them as graceful as we can, with whether it's movement or breath work or nature or solitude or quietude or baths or being with our animals or talking to a loved one. The more ways we can come to learn how to move and grow through those difficult times, the easier it will be, especially separating that from food. And that kind of goes just a little bit into that emotional eating aspect.
That's amazing. And I did was talking about harmonic earth healers earlier. My friend,
Yeah, yeah,
she's definitely, I was telling him earlier that you may want to talk with Chris, because he's
yeah,
got a lot of insights on that as well. And I wanted to say too that some things I've learned just with emotional struggles and some OCD type things, your brain actually listens to how you like, if it's like a kid, if they realize they're reaching for the cookie and you always give them the cookie, then they're going to know, if I do this, I'm going to get a cookie. It's like pets, right? Like,
yeah.
our animal friends, they know what they can get, if that certain meow gets them a treat, right? So like
Yes,
our brain is the same. If it, every time we feel depressed or we feel emotionally stressed and we get this food, it tells our brain that that's what it should do,
yeah.
that food helped, and then it just goes on a cycle. So I love the way you approach it from like a mental level, because everybody knows how to eat healthy. And so
Mhm.
why don't more people? I think it's more emotional than knowing what to eat, honestly, or taste or anything. And
Absolutely.
do people that skateboard also snowboard, or not necessarily? Well, I assume I heard you talk about surfing. Do you snowboard too?
Yeah, I used to snowboard a lot more. I think I started in the early 90s and I snowboarded. The last time I snowboarded, amazingly, was in 1999. So it's been like 20 some years. I just really started to like realize I just like warmth a lot more, and snowboarding, I love it, but it costs a lot of money. Like the equipment is expensive, getting to a hill is expensive, the hill passes are expensive. I love it. I'd like to do it again. I look forward to the next time. But skateboarding is like, I have a board, I go out, I'm skating, like surfing is a little harder too, but I love being outside in sweat or in a bathing suit with sun, compared to again being bundled up.
Reason.
So yeah, so like I do love both a ton. I love all three a ton, but and a lot of people do who skateboard either at least try snowboarding or also skateboard or surfing or also snow. What is it? Snow skating, where it's like a skateboard with a ski on the bottom and you're not hooked in, so there's no binding. So that's another kind of cool one too.
Wow, that sounds so cool. That and I love Tessa's question. Sometimes I had Don Bennett on, and she asked what his favorite movie all time was. Sometimes I love her. She loves getting to know the guests. Thank you, Tessa. She's always here for me.
Tessa's awesome, and Don Bennett's awesome too. I feel blessed to call him a friend, and I've learned a lot from him as well. He's great.
Yeah, I love his info. I definitely check it out. Uh, she was nervous for social outings at work and how I'm never going to eat anything and that they serve at work functions unless they have fruit. In previous jobs, I've pretended that I have, I think it cut off, severe allergies. And that's why I don't eat anything with a laughy face. Yeah, I know, right? We all come up that someone actually said that as advice one time if you didn't feel like explaining yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's so important to know that we never have to explain ourselves, and if we want, we can just say something like that. Yeah, I have allergies, or I'm on a special diet that my doctor has me on right now, or or you can. Something I usually recommend to people who have a hard time with social outings is to eat a whole bunch before they go, like have a big smoothie. So when they get there, they're not thinking about food, they're not hungry. And if they have some, carrot sticks and broccoli or whatever, they can snack on a little bit and just say, oh, I ate before, I'm not too hungry. And otherwise, it can be really helpful to bring a giant sized portion of food that you would enjoy and share it with everyone. Like, oh, I just made this giant salad. I had a lot of stuff. And then, you can still eat half of it, but everyone else can have a little bit of it, but I brought, cases of fruit to social events before and just like, hey, everyone have some, and people love it. They gravitate towards it, but then I just make sure I have enough for myself as well. But I think the simplest solution for a lot of those is to eat before at least enough so that food isn't in your mind. You're not craving, you're not like really hungry. And then otherwise don't make a giant deal of it. Again, even like she just said, like, yeah, I have allergies, or, oh, I just ate before. I'm here for the connection, like, I think again, like going back to what are you thinking about and what are you focused on? It doesn't matter whether we're talking about these social things or, the emotional aspects. It's like, it comes back to what we're focusing on. And most of the time when we're going out is because we're going out to see people, but if we focus on the food and the differences between the food, it becomes really challenging. But if we focus on, hey, I want to talk to this person, I want to learn more about them, or this is a work thing, we want to talk about work, and you just really focus on that and make that the priority, then the rest of the stuff isn't really as important.
It's pretty interesting. Almost, I found that I realized how much the connection, that I wasn't focusing on the connection with people and I was focused on food, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like I remember at Thanksgiving, we brought like these two big packs of the little round cuties or clementines because there's no
Yeah, they're so
kids
good.
there. And we came like late, but that's no different. I'm always late. Obviously, I was late coming to the live. So we came after they were done eating conveniently, kind of, I guess, in my opinion, so I don't have to see the turkey on the table and all that. It's already gone. They're already having dessert, right? But it was
Yeah.
funny because everybody grabbed a couple of those and some other fruit, and they were having that, as a second dessert because you always get re-hungry like 10 times. And I was like, I remember taking pictures that it was kind of cool because I got to see everyone. And it's like after 5 years you kind of figure out how to gel it in. But I remember that first year of holidays, I looked like everybody was staring at me with the big thing of vegetables. Don't you
Yeah.
want a bite of this? You know what I mean? It's like you're gonna go through that, but you just have to be solid and remember, like, this is what I'm putting in my body. This is not their body, right? So that's so important when you really think about it. It's like you wouldn't, take a drug that someone was offering you if you're somebody that doesn't take drugs. And if you start looking at food as medicine and fuel, it makes it easier, I think, to gel in those in a way.
Huge. Hugely, absolutely. And I think that's part of the reality too, is that we're going to probably have to go through trying a whole bunch of different things and going through a lot of different emotions and experiences socially and emotionally with this, and just realizing that and being okay with it, and doing it kind of like you're an explorer, that it's an experiment. Like, instead of getting so attached to each and every one of those, just be aware and go like, oh, well, I tried this, it felt good, but it was still a little bit weird. And I noticed heat raised within me, and I felt some discord between some people when I mentioned this or when I made a big point about that. Okay, well, next time let's try something else and see how that feels. And eventually you come to more of a streamlined kind of flow that, hey, this just feels the best. And, I enjoy that, And again, kind of going back to like, we don't have to make a big deal of things. It really is all what we focus on. Like, we get to come in there and decide, like, am I going to make this a big deal and be awkward? And people are going to look at me and think I would never want to be a raw foodist because that just looks so not fun and they were so uncomfortable. Or do we want to be a shining example? Because, this is the most powerful choice that I think we can truly make. It really makes such a huge, huge difference. And I'm not saying that we should come into situations with lots of pride and like showing off and like, this is the best thing and you got to do it. But knowing that and feeling confident that this is an amazing, powerful choice. And just by doing it, that's an amazing example. And again, you don't have to like make a deal of it. You don't have to explain it, but just by doing it and feeling comfortable, and instead of focusing on the food and, judging other people or creating some kind of energetic discord by making a big deal about food and looking at food and thinking about it a whole bunch, focus on the other people and be interested and have fun and just, enjoy the food you have, and, it's one meal. It's one meal. Like it's just food. It doesn't have to be the be all end all. And we can eat before, we can have whatever we get there. And then what are we going to remember after? Are we going to remember about what each person ate? Or are we going to remember about the energy that you were emitting and the other people were emitting and the connections that we made and the conversations we had? And I just find that makes it so much easier, and also opens people up so much more to the possibility that this is a viable lifestyle and that it's attractive, rather than like, oh my God, they're like really anxious and like shy and like scared and, stuff like that. Right. So like, I like to look at it from all of those perspectives, because I want to see this spread, and I want to see people have the easiest, most fun time. And I want others to think that this is an amazing, amazing lifestyle, because it is. Like I said, it's like, doesn't matter if we're looking at ecology or the animals or our human health. All of those are in a hard spot in this world, and everyone shining their light bright and being proud of it without being prideful is just the most amazing choice we can make.
And definitely stay with it, because over time, it does definitely get easier as far as settling into your own way of eating, and kind of and your family, like the same that has happened to me. They just kind of know that's who you are and that's how you eat. And sometimes spilling over, like you said, you have such energy. I'm sure if you go around your friends, even if they're not ready right at that minute, at some point people that are probably have reached out to you and said, after all these years, I see you still able to do things I can't. And I'm like, now I'm dealing with this health issue maybe or something. Hey, can you kind of give me some ideas? Like, I mean, that would be someone I'd want to emulate and work with, not someone who was yelling at me or, not focusing on our connection. It doesn't, we don't want to take away our connection with friends. I love that. And family, and put a wall between it, because it's our family. We love them. We ate like
Absolutely.
them 10, 15, well, for you longer ago, but like mine was very, pretty recent. And I'm just mad I didn't see that bin at Walmart, because I've gotten so many good movies out of that. I could have been healthy longer.
all in its time and place. And that goes back to exactly what you said, that everyone's on their different page, and it's like, remembering where we came from, and recognizing that, at one point I wasn't ready to hear this message and I laughed at it. I thought it was ridiculous, but through being the example, you're planting seeds. Just seeing people do this, that's planting seeds, and it opens up a crack. And, it might be weeks later, maybe months or years later, but those plants or those seeds can grow and can make a huge difference. And you really don't know the effect you have on other people. I do an entire talk on, are you an angry vegan? And it's like, I think everything has its time and place, but I like to come back to, again, like, what do you want to grow with yourself, and what do you want to be exhibiting to the world, and what is attractive to you? Like to me, it's not super attractive to be angry all the time and shouting at people and telling them what they're doing wrong, but instead being like happy and buoyant and energy filled and compassionate, and exhibiting those qualities is attractive. And to me, that's what will bring the most people into this. And again, I want to say, like, everything has its time and place. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, but I know for myself, I want to experience health and happiness and boisterous and connection and compassion for everyone, and so that leads me to that bigger conclusion, to see the rounder picture of it.
That's amazing. And I'm going to read 2 more questions and then wrap up about noon, if that's great, because I have another awesome guest. Corinne Sutton is going to come on at
Oh, awesome.
12:30. So that's going to be,
awesome.
if you guys are still around and still want to hang out, definitely.
He's got some of these. He's got some guns.
Yeah, not as big as ours, but I
Yeah.
got a few. Just kidding. Just kidding, Corinne. We know yours are bigger than mine. But Chris is close there. I'm telling you, you must work out. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Tattoos. My sister loves tattoos, so I had to send her your picture. I was like, oh, she's going to probably have that soon with her whole entire arm filled. She got one little one on the foot, and it just created havoc there. She's got them. I'm like, I don't have any yet.
They're habit.
Michelle said, Chris, you are my kind of people. And oh, you're welcome, Tessa. Thank you. Great questions. I love everybody in the comments. Oh, Muriel here said, any suggestions for losing weight? I'm staying about the same. I would love to have another 45 pounds or so. That's if you don't mind answering that one.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it depends to some degree, where you're coming from and what your lifestyle and diet is like. I mean, the general kind of ways, let's say we're assuming we're talking about a raw food diet, which sounds like we are, of course, but
it is mostly, if not all raw. I've been vegan a long time. I do know that from her being in my group. So she's been raw, trying to do high fruit, but she's just not able to get down below where she wants.
Yeah. So the main things there are, one, bringing the fat content to somewhere between 7 to 15% of your total calories coming from fat. If you haven't read the book, The 80-10-10 Diet by Dr. Graham, I highly recommend reading that, because that goes into the science of all of the things we're talking about with common sense and real world examples. And then other than that, the other way is, one, I guess, to up the exercise a little bit, but that's not huge. The bigger thing with losing weight is just coming to a balance with getting about as much calories as you need, or a slight bit less calories than you need, but feeling totally satiated. Because if you're using willpower and eating a lot less, you're going to bonk and then usually binge and make up for it, and eat way more calories. But what often works for a lot of people is still eating high fruit, low fat, but replacing a piece or two of fruit per day, or at the most a piece of fruit per meal, with more greens and or veggies. So you're getting more nutrient density, you're getting more volume, because the veggies are higher volume, lower calories. So you feel really satiated, you're getting all that nutrition in, but you're getting a slight bit less calories, because predictably, if we eat a little less calories, we lose weight. If we eat more, we gain weight. And if we're eating the exact amount that our body requires, then we're going to stay at that weight, right? So those would be the big things. Making sure if the fat content is over 15%, lower it down to 15% or low on average. That's the most easily accomplished by eating, on average, for most women, about a half an avocado per day with their dinner, or a handful or two max, like closed handful or two max of nuts and seeds with their dinner meal. And you don't have to eat that every day by any means. Some people like to have some days that are totally fat-free, and then other days where they have a little bit more. So maybe they have one avocado every second day instead of half an avocado every day. Or maybe they just have, like a tablespoon or two of flax seeds in their dinner salad dressing, and that feels really good. But finding your balance with that, and again, just like eating maybe one piece less of fruit per meal, and incorporating more greens and veggies, and getting some exercise. The only other thing that I'll add on to is that emotional component. And if we notice that we tend to eat when we feel tension or anxiousness or urgency or uncomfortable feelings, if it's like, oh, I feel like uncomfortable, and then I choose to eat. Well, coming back into contact with emotional eating and the realization that hunger isn't painful, anxious, urgent, specific, or accompanied by any symptoms. It's a pleasant feeling. So if we're eating out of unpleasant feelings, it's not really serving our digestion very well. And also, we're way more likely to be eating without presence, which can lead to eating heavier foods and faster and more of it than we require. So really checking in with that and developing a habit that if we feel discomfort, feel it, have a glass of water, move around, take a walk, slow down, breathe a little bit, because most of the time that's just a cleansing cycle our body's going through. It will take maybe 10, 15 minutes to clear. After that 10, 15 minutes, we're in a calm, balanced state. And then we're much more prepared to eat food and be way more present and eat appropriately rather than be diving for, again, the heavier foods, eating way more fat or eating without presence and overdoing it. So I'd say those are the major components of finding more balance with emotional eating as well as weight loss.
Do you think too, because I know I went through this when I first went vegan or raw or both, like kind of like for our whole life, we were thinking that we needed a base of like a protein or a meat. And sometimes also when you're vegan, like when I went vegan and started into cooked food, I always had rice, bread. You feel like you need substance. And I think it's almost like stuck in our minds somewhere when you're eating fruit all day that this isn't, you know what I mean? Like, because you were so, especially if you were older when you went raw, it's like you've been so programmed to need like more or need extra like carb. But, you know, sometimes we don't think of fruit as carb, you know, like, so I feel like that's definitely part of our cravings too. A lot of it is emotional.
Absolutely. Emotional and having that understanding, having that nutritional background helps a ton. And again, going back to like, if we could only have one food to match our total nutrient needs, thinking both of the macro, so the EFAs, the carbohydrates, and the protein and water, and also all the minerals and all the micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, flavonoids, all those things. There's no food on the planet that comes closer to matching what we exactly need in the exact ratios than fruit. Like it's the closest to our perfect food. It's really the only food that we can eat one at a time in its totally natural state and get enough calories from and feel great digestively. You know, like you can't, like, vegetables are great. I love vegetables and they're a hugely important part of the diet, but try and get all your calories from raw vegetables, you know, for a week. You're going to have a really hard time. You know, try and get all your calories from, you know, dense starchy carbohydrates without cooking them. You're going to have an awful time, you know, like, but with fruit, you can actually do it. So like making that the center of the diet, enjoying all you could care for, and then accompanying as much vegetables as you really genuinely enjoy, you know, that backs it up, because any nutrient that is number one for our needs with fruit, vegetables is number two. And any nutrient that is number two for fruit is number one for vegetables. So they make like the best team, you know, and when you get enough of both of those, all your needs are met. And, you know, of course, we could then go into little nuances like, you know, a little bit of extra density of EFAs and some seeds, and they make an incredible addition to the diet. And, you know, seaweeds can be beneficial for some nutrients that aren't super common, or at least not in high levels in terrestrial plants. Or you can utilize, you know, like sprouted legumes and stuff like that if you want some amino acids a little bit more dense, or you want a little bit more of a hearty feeling. But really the basis of this is just going back to really realizing that fruits and vegetables are like the best foods for us. And if we enjoy the ones we enjoy the most, you know, with no restriction, we're much more likely to be totally satisfied and not slowly disappear off the planet.
Because of the holiday here, there's so many cars going by. I keep getting every now and then interrupted with zzz, and I'm like, I don't want to cut him off. This is such information. Speaking of that, Tessa said this was such a helpful live, and I'm going to end in just a second here, but I want to thank you so much. And B12 and everything like that, do you recommend supplementing just before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. The only supplements that I've taken in my 20 years is B12 and vitamin D. B12 I took after 10 years, and I think it was 4 or 5 blood tests of it slowly going down to a point where I actually became clinically deficient and symptomatic. And so the last decade I have included B12. And I think, you know, I don't think that everyone needs to just immediately start supplementing B12, but it's something that's very good to be aware of. And the absolute vast majority of people would be better off supplementing B12. It's really inexpensive. It's really safe. And the detriments, I've met too many people who came from a philosophical viewpoint and were like against supplementation and didn't take B12 and ended up with irreversible neurological damage, you know, and like, I've just seen it way too often. And so I'm a big proponent of getting your B12 levels checked through a MMA or a UMMA test and a homocysteine test. And if you're anywhere near deficient, either trying to correct it through simplifying the diet and, you know, living more close to nature, but realistically, There's a reason why almost every single vegan doctor on the planet recommends just supplementing B12 for assurance, because it's so integral to health, like in many ways that we don't even fully understand all the different ways that it's connected with so many different processes in our body and long-term health and brain health and all that good stuff. So, and vitamin D, I mean, I grew up in Canada, and during the winter, you don't get much vitamin D. So most of my years as a raw vegan, I traveled to the tropics. So I've only actually supplemented vitamin D twice out of the 20 years during the winters where I didn't travel, or the year that I got in the motorcycle accident and I wasn't able to get sunshine for half of the summer. I wasn't able to travel in the winter, and I was doing a lot of bone regrowing because my whole left leg was mutilated. So I wanted to make sure I high in vitamin D so that I could have really strong bone regrowth, which is important for hormonal function and bone and tissue growth. So
I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. My goodness, we're happy to have you here still. That sounded like a really scary situation.
It was pretty dang intense, but I grew a lot through it, and it also gave me a year off where I just watched Star Trek and chilled out with my girlfriend, and
right.
But I did also, then I took Dr. Rick and Karen Dina's Mastering Raw Food Nutrition course, so I even furthered my knowledge, and through their experience of like 40 years with raw food, or 30 each, I think. But it's everything with its own time and blessings,
Definitely. I appreciate that you looked in the at the good in it. I'm sure not immediately, but you definitely found a way to make that actually a good thing that happened in the adversity. So thank you for sharing that too, and all your insights. And it definitely is such a blessing to have someone who has so much knowledge, but also so much knowledge in helping us mentally and emotionally based on your struggles. I feel like you really give that back, and I really appreciate that. And where people are coming from. We're getting some good feedback here. Thank you guys so much. I wanted to say thank you to Muriel for your awesome questions. Thank you, Michelle, Harmonic Earth Healer. I always want to say Harmonic Health Healer for some reason. Thank you, Muriel. Where's Tessa here? They're all saying thank you, and it was such a helpful live. I feel like I might have forgotten some one. I hope not, but thank you everyone who came and watched. I appreciate you. And before we leave, I just want to give you the opportunity to say, can you, if it's not too long, if you don't mind, I love getting this in because people always want to know what you eat in a day, and then any closing thoughts, and we'll go ahead and head out after that. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you.
Such a pleasure. Absolutely. No, I appreciate you and you bringing me on, and all the fun comments and connection. It's definitely been a joy. What I eat in a day, it does change with the seasons, but typically nowadays, and I'll start with a preamble, that when I first started, I was eating like between 3 to 5 meals a day, because that's what my stomach capacity was, and that's what my my just enjoyment led to. But these days, I usually eat 2 meals a day, sometimes 3. But for example, today, I guess I had 3 because I had a melon to begin. I just had a honeydew. And then I just had a banana smoothie. It was 12, which for me, 12 bananas is actually a pretty small meal. I usually eat 15 to 18 bananas for lunch. And for dinner, I'm going to be having some orange juice, followed by a orange curry that is going to have orange juice with some hemp seeds and some curry powder, and have that over top of frozen and thawed broccoli, partially dehydrated mushrooms, and some lentil sprouts. So yeah, most commonly, again, it's just like 2 meals. Both of them start with fruit, or fruit is the whole lunch usually. And then dinner is followed by a big veggie meal, which could be a salad, or it could be a curry, or a veggie-based meal.
Oh, nice. That sounds good. You're making me hungry. What time is it where you are?
6:10.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's only 12:10 noon over here. I'm like, no wonder. I was like, you made a lot before noon.
Yeah, no, yeah.
The last meal. That's too long, unless you go to bed really early. I gotcha. That is awesome. That sounds so good, refreshing, sustaining, and that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And the last thing, I just want to give you a moment, any closing thoughts or message, and tell us where we can find you one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, you can find me at therawadvantage.com. I'm also everywhere on social media at therawadvantage, from Instagram to TikTok to LinkedIn to you name it. I'm across the board pretty much. My closing thought would be, again, just like hone in on what you enjoy the most. Like, healthful living really comes down to really, really simple tenets and focusing in on what just feels amazing and lifts you up and makes you feel expansive and buoyant and connected, you know? So this lifestyle is just such a blessing, and I encourage everyone to play with it, to experiment, to try on these things that we talked about, and just to enjoy what you enjoy and incorporate more of it and let go of the things that don't resonate and don't bring you to where you want to go. And it just gets better and better.
That is amazing. And Michelle, that's who it was. I was like, I always look at her and Muriel as one person because they're related. And I do that all the time. I think I forgot to say, Michelle, thank you for joining. Muriel, Harmonic Health, Earth Healers, and Tessa. I'll get it right one of these days. And finally, Chris, thank you so much for all the time. I mean, we went way over, but I couldn't help it. You're such a wealth of knowledge. I couldn't stop asking questions. So if you need to, yell at me in the direct message if it went too long. I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate everyone.
Me too. Absolutely. No, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and everyone have a great rest of your holiday, and join me for the next live if you can. Thank you, Chris. Chris Kendall, everyone, the Raw Advantage.
Have a good day.
I wanted to just make that lion noise all of a sudden, you know, like.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Ooh, maybe I like it raw.
I'll work on that next time, right? I need to work on my voice for that.
Lion roars are hard. They're really hard. I've worked on it. It's tough.
Thank you. Okay, enjoy.